Good evening, everyone, and welcome once again to today's class. Today we'll be looking at styling in React. I'm not sure this is not supposed to be a tough class because I believe that when you all did HTML, like one of the most important things you guys did was styling, right? So I'm pretty sure we'll not waste time. We'll just take them quickly and then uh, we'll be done. Okay? Is that good? I see somebody is excited. Why are you so excited about styling? Okay. Yeah, so but I think it's actually apt if you are excited about styling. Styling is actually what gives the UI beauty. So as a front-end engineer, you should always be excited about styling. If you are really good with styling, your user interface is going to be flawless, right? Yeah, so let's go ahead and look at some concepts in styling. All right, so acknowledge one more time that you can hear me. So I'll be using the same code base which we used earlier, but in this case, I'll just take out some components, right? So welcome card. So let's say alt context, protected environment, so let's see what we have on the home page. So we have two forms on the home page, right? Let's see formic form. Okay, so we'll utilize this formic form for the purpose of this class. All right. Um, so basically, what styling? Like, what do you understand by styling? Like, how would you explain if a random person comes to you and just asks in front end what styling? How best will you describe styling to the person? I need two people to respond. So raise your hand up and then I would, okay, Ade, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah, good evening.
Yeah, my understanding about styling is giving your structure, which is your either your apps or web structure, giving it a visually appealing touch.
Okay, okay. All right, one more person. Who's going at it? Greg, when last did I hear from Greg in this class? Hello, Greg, let me hear you. Go ahead and speak. Greg, if you're speaking, we can't hear you. Okay, maybe he's having network issues. Josh, you can go ahead.
Okay, so good evening. I don't want to say much. Just go straight to the point. Styling is just what brings out the beauty of different elements in programming. Just put it that way.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so basically, like how I always start this class. I like to pick your brains first before we continue. And I'm always impressed because people always have good things, like good answers, right? Regardless, like I always say, don't be shy to answer a question. Nobody's wrong. If you don't get it right, the opportunity is here. So we'll still get it right eventually. All right. So styling is a key part of building good-looking React application, basically. In fact, not just React applications generally, right? Because you have to start. Now, when we learned HTML, CSS, and uh, JavaScript, right? it was likened, the three of them were likened to the part of the human body, right? Where the skeleton is the HTML, the skin, that is the different features on your body, is the is the style, right? Is the CSS. So your eyes, the way your eyes is designed, the way your eyelashes are designed, your hand, your type of nails, all that is the styling of your body, right? Then JavaScript is the script that helps you move your eyelid, helps you move your hand, helps you walk, you know. So that alone should tell you that let's assume that our bodies were just skeletons and the brain, right? It's going to be awkward. Imagine skeletons walking all around, right? Or do you have anybody here does not agree with me that you think it would be beautiful to have humans walk around just skeletons and brain? Just write in the comment box. Nah, exactly. So exactly. So nobody it will be so awkward, right? It won't be nice. Okay, so so with that said, you already know what it means. So styling is very important. Likewise, the HTML. Remember when all the work we've been doing all along, we've been working with, I've not been styling my application, and look at see what it looks like. It's just not okay. Correct? So basically, you require styling to, in fact, I think we had to do some styling here to even make it look presentable like this, right? So styling is very important. It's like also a very essential part of building your application, which is why we are going to be looking at it today. Okay, so there are different methods of styling, okay? So there is the external styling, where you have an external style sheet and then you import your external style sheet into your component. Now, please take note of the structure that I am about to design for my code base. Okay. Now, because I want to style this formic form, right? Which is this form. Ideally, inside here, these are all models. Each of them are different models of their own, right? So if I want to style each of them to avoid confusion inside here, I wouldn't come here and create a style sheet for formic forms. So I won't say formic. Hold on, guys. I won't say formic forms dot CSS here. Do you follow? So now, if you look at this code structure now, it's very tacky. Now you have forming forms. Imagine that I'm now styling each of these components. That means I'll have forming forms. I'll have a component, the style. The component, the style is not cool. It's not cool at all. Instead, what I would do is create a I'll create a directory and call it forming forms. Forming form. And then I will move everything that has to do with forming form into that directory. So now what happens is I have my style sheet and my component in one location. Now it's very easy for a developer, maybe a colleague, to come here and just understand immediately that Formic has its properties within this directory. Opening it, the person gets to see everything that has to do with Formic. If there are other things I want to add that have to do with Formic, I can always add those things within this directory. to make sure that it's understood that everything inside here works together. Do you understand? I'm taking time to explain why my code structure is like this, so that when I mark your task and I tell you I don't like the code structure, you would understand what I mean. Okay? Are we good? Can we move on? All right. Yeah, so for that person that joined, just watch the class again. So moving forward, let's assume that we want to style this formic form, right? So we already did style these formic forms inside our app.css folder. So let's just pick those styles and implement them inside our formic form style sheet. Okay? So now, if we go to formic form style sheet and add this, okay, so now we have our style here. If we go back to our code, everything has scattered. Okay, nothing is the way it should be anymore inside formic forms. What we need to do now is import this style sheet into our formic form component. So we can say, all right, so let's just, this is, okay. So we save this, and then let's see what's happening here. So hold on, guys, let me resolve this. Okay, all right, so yeah, okay, don't worry, I'll talk about that. Okay, so let's go on and see what is happening here. So say we have this issue. Okay, so I think we're having an issue here. Hold on, guys. Let me figure out why this is. This should not be causing an issue. Yeah, exactly. They're in the same folder. So Mm. Give me a minute, everyone. I'll be with you in a second. So let me resolve this issue. All right, thank you for that. So I think it was a typo error that was causing the issue. All right, let's go on. Are we together? So ideally, it should be formic form. I think that's why we have this issue. So I'm going to change this to formic form and remove this formic form. Okay, all right. So I think this works now. Yeah. So now we have our style, right? So if we want to modify this style now, all we need to do is work within the form wrap, within the formic form dot CSS, okay? So whatever changes we want to make, we can make those changes within this file. So let's assume we want to make a little bit update to our form. So we can come here and add some further styling, right? So how many input fields do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, let's just work with that. And then we say for each input field, we want to style each input field, correct? So we can either target the input field or give it a class name, okay? So we can call it input wrapper. And call it input wrapper. Okay. So what we'll do is duplicate this for all the inputs because we want to maintain consistent style, right? Now, I want to clarify something. So if you notice, I can actually style the field, okay? I can style the field component itself, but I don't always advise that kind of styling. Except it is a style that will be consistent across your whole application. Then you can go ahead and style the tag. So let's say I want all my div, all my H1 tags to have one consistent style across board, right? That is the only time I will target my H1 to style my H1, okay? Now, why I'll do that is because I don't want to go through the stress of changing my style across like in different components if I want to change anything about that H1. I want to be able to change it in one location, right? So in that kind of scenario, I will style my H1 tag, and then when there is a change, probably a client request or a stakeholder request, or maybe teammates after a lot of brainstorming, there's need to make changes to a particular to the H1 tag across board. It's easy to just go to one place and make that change. Now, in that kind of scenario, so let's actually do this H1. So let's have H1 here and call it global style. Okay. Now for this, let's give it a class name. Okay, we won't need a class name. We'll just design the H tag itself. Now, if we come and target the H1 inside our app.css, right? So if we come here and target the H1 and then give it a default font, a default font size, font color, yeah, so let's give it just one random color. So we have this color for H1 now, right? So if I save it and I go ahead to add the same H1 tag, so let's say H1 tag formic, and then we'll go ahead and add the same H1 tag inside the other form we were working with. So I think that was React hook. So if we add that H1 here, okay, if we go back to our code, you see that we have for every H1, it has this color, global style formic, right? Now, I can use this particular H1 across my whole application if I want to maintain that very design across the whole application. But if I would have need to have different variants of H1, that is style different types of H1 within my component, then I will have to give my H1 a class name and style the class name instead of styling the tag. Do we understand what I just explained? Good. Now, for this kind of cases where you want to style the tag itself, right? For global use, that kind of style should be done inside the app.css, which is where you have all your global, where in fact, basically all your global styling should be done inside your app.css, right? So the whole idea is when I come into your application, if I come into the app.css, I should be able to see all the custom styles that you've done for things that you want to reuse across the whole application, not component-based, not page-based styling, styles, right? So over here is your global style is what you will put here. Then when in scenarios like where you want to style your formic form now, then you create a formic CSS file for that formic form. Okay? And then style your form elements inside this particular file, inside this particular file. Now, after styling here, there are components that you have already styled. Remember, you have global components. So for those kind of components now, you can easily just bring them and use them in your form without having to style them again. Okay? Since that app.css already affects the whole application. Are we good? Yeah, so basically index.css is also like an entry point styling. It's also global. So like you can see over here, you have different styles here. You can see H1 tag is being styled here. This is by default, right? You can also do your global styling inside index.css, whichever one works best for you, either the app.css or the index.css. But basically, this app.css now is just like saying app.css, app.jsx. This main.jsx is like index.jsx. So as you can see, it's quite modular in nature. They're already giving you a way to handle all your styling. But what happens now is that for these two styles, because of their placement in the application, as you can see, because index.css is placed at the entry point of the application, it affects the whole application. Do you understand? Now, likewise, app.jsx. You come here to app.jsx, you see that app.jsx is imported inside app.jsx, and app.jsx is also like an entry point for the whole application because your whole routes have been defined inside the app.jsx. So any style that you place in this index.css that affects the main.css affects the whole application. Likewise, any style that is added to app.css, right, will affect everything. All the children of this app.jsx will also benefit from the style that is here, which is why they are both global styles. Do you understand now? Udot, so that's for your question. You were asking, so what style do you put in uh in index.css? So is it clear now? All right, okay. So let's carry on. So I don't think I want that's H1 star. So I'm going to remove it. And then let's go ahead to our component and continue. All right, so we are in our component and like you can see, we have these stars done, right? And we can see the result of the styling here. So I think there's an issue with email. Okay, so basically let's remove some of these forms so that we can have a clearer view of what we are working with, okay? So let's go to our home page. And then for our home page, let's remove this, okay? And then let's go to app.jsx. Is there a form here? Okay. So homepage, formic forms, lower style formic. Why do we have two displays? Hold on, guys. Homepage, web one. Okay, let's see why we have two formic forms. Hmm. App.jsx. What I found here. Okay, so just focus on what we have up here. So look at it. Where is this thing? Well, I'm with you guys. Just give me a second. Mhm. Okay, so it seems like this global star is actually inside. The issue is actually inside forming forms. How many forms do we have inside here? Okay, I see the issue. Pardon me, guys. Okay, all right. So back to what we're working on, right? So let's style this form and see what comes out of it. But let's start the form instead. Let's just start the form. So we created our input wrappers, right? So we can go ahead and pick our input wrapper and style our input wrapper. So we'll go to our form. So we'll say dot forming input wrapper. Then let's give the input wrapper some padding, right? So let's say padding top, padding of 6px, then 2px. So if you notice, our input fields have gotten a little bit bigger, right? So we can increase it so that we have, let's say, 8px, and then we'll maintain 2px on the sides. Okay, so let's increase the width of our form. So we'll say width, and let's give it 70%. Okay. All right, so basically what we need to do first, before giving this a width, is to style the form as a whole, because apparently the form is little, so we need to expand the form before we can expand the input fields, okay? So we'll come to form wrapper. We already have that form wrapper, and then we can give form wrapper a width of 80%. So with this, we should be able to visualize our forms increase in width. Okay, so don't be scared. I just removed all the custom styles so that we can work with what we have. So let's say for this, Okay. Hold on, guys. Let's clear out. I'm trying to clear out this whole view. All right. Okay, now we can go back to our form and do our styling. Good. So we can now say, let's check if we have any width that would cause problems here. All right. And let's also check app.css. Okay. I think we can work with this. It's okay. All right. So let's go back. Okay. So if we give this form wrapper, okay. So we give this 100%, and then we give our form input field 100%. Hold on, guys. Let me figure this out. Okay, hold on, guys. So this is software engineering. This happens sometimes, okay? Yeah, so I'll be with you guys in a minute. Even though we're taking too long on this, we should have been done with this by now. So we have wrapper class and then we have formic. This Okay. Okay. So I think we can go on with our class now. So if we come here and we apply this width to our form field wrapper, then we should have this, okay? And then we want it to be lesser than that. Okay, so basically what was stressing us was the default styling, which I did not completely overhaul before we started this class. So yeah, so when you create your when you create your projects, make sure to clear out default style so that you don't pass through this issue we just had, okay? Are we good? Are we good, guys? Okay, so yeah, so someone says I should come again. So I'm saying that we had default style from this application when we created it. So when you create an application, it comes with a default styling system, right? Which has already been designed. Now, if you don't remove the things you don't need, it can cause problems, like it can be problematic for you. So it's advisable to clear out that and then customize whatever you want to have in that global styling section. Okay, are we good? All right, okay. So let's go ahead and continue from where we left off. So now we've given our form field wrappers a width of 40%, which you can see now they are bigger. So I think we did not apply that style to our password fields. So let's do that quickly. Yeah, I think there's not here. Okay. Then form field wrappers are available, and then we save. And then we can have a unified form input field now, okay? Now, so let's increase the height of these forms. But for me, for here, I will just utilize the padding to increase that height, okay? So I'll give it 9 of 10px. Let's increase this to 3. Okay. So with this now, we can see our input fields are taking shape, right? Okay, so I think we had our email styles and we had our validation style in the global component. So those are the kind of issues we can face if we don't modularize our styling. So now we won't be styling that for now, so that we will not eat it too deep into our time. We've already taken too long solving bugs. Okay, so now let's go ahead and just fix the form. So let's say for the input field, we want to give it solid background. Maybe a little All right, good. So now our form is looking a little bit better, okay? So we are going to maintain this style and use it to look at other forms of styling. So basically what we've just done is external styling, right? Now, we can also do our styling utilizing JavaScript inside our JSX. Okay, now how this works, if we come here, you can come to your form component and just write your style within the component. So I can take out this and write my style directly here, all right? Like this. And I can define my style. Maybe let's say I want to add, let's add padding. So let's add padding of 8px. And then let's add border radius. Of say 5, okay? So let's see other suggestions. Okay, let's add same style. So if we come here, you can see that so we did not add the width. So what width did we use in our previous style? 100%, okay? So let's give it a width of 100, okay? All right. So now we have the width of 100%, right? Okay. So I think we have some differences in our padding. That's probably why our input field is a little bit longer here, but that's very okay. Let's just move on. So now you can see that we can still style inside our component here. Now, for this styling to be cleaner, this is what you should rather do. Instead of writing your code inside here, you should just define your style and then pass that style to the component that you want to have that style. Okay, so if you come to you can just create a style value. So you can say input, let's give it the same name we had earlier. So say input wrapper. Okay. So let's call it input wrapper. And then we can now define our style within this input wrapper. Okay. So can give it the same style that we already gave before. And then all we need to do is pass this input wrapper into the component that we want that style to affect. And you can see that the style is very much present. So if we pick this style and add it to all our components instead of class name, it should still give us the same results. Are we good? Now, note that in this case, we don't require importing any style sheets into our component, because if I remove this style sheet from here, our style will still work. So hold on. Okay, so basically what's happening here is that the other styles that we did not implement within this very style, within this component, cannot apply. So let's just rather comment out for understanding. Let's just comment out, comment the input style. So you see that it still works, okay? Yeah, so as you can see, it still works. So you see that for this very input field that we did not convert, we did not change to this method, it's still struggling to access this input wrapper style from our style sheet. Since it doesn't have any style, it doesn't work, right? But as soon as we bring in this style and add it here, now it works. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at another method of styling. But before we do that, let's look at one more thing before we move. So let's look at conditional rendering or conditional styling, right? So let's assume that for this submit button now, we want to have like a different color for when it is active and when it is not active, right? So we can define an active state, an active prop, right? Which will pass down. You can either define an active prop or let's just have a state. Let's just define a state, right? All right, so let's just define this state. And then for this state, let's just utilize this particular is active to do what we want to do, okay? All right, so with this now, we can go ahead and, yeah, it's called inline. It's inline, yes. So inline, or you can call it whatever, but the main thing is that you need to know that it's inside your JSX that you're writing your style, okay? So basically it's inline styling, yeah. So for this now, we now have this active, right? So if I pull this active and then I come to my button, right? And add style. And for this style, I want to say, if this component, if this button is active, right? If this button is active, I want to give it a background color. So let's create the style outside this, okay? Like we did before. Don't get me wrong, we can actually do it here, but since we've gone for a cleaner version, let's just do it in a cleaner version, okay? So let's say const button style, okay? Then definitely let's give it padding. And then let's give it padding, let's give it background color, text color, okay? Didn't bother, it's fine. All right. So with this now, we have the button style, right? Now, for this background color, we want to change this background color based on this state. So I believe you know why I'm bringing it up here because you will not be able to use that state if it is under this component. So now I can say is active. So if is active is true, all right, I want to use this green color. But if it is false, I want to pass this red color. Okay. And then I save it. So we have an error. Let's go and check that. Okay, yeah. So our error is because we haven't added our style to button. Okay. So if we save this now, we should have some style on our button component. Okay. So now if we go back to our code and change the status of this particular button active state to true, right? We should have a different color of button. Are we following? Are we following, guys? All right, okay. All right, pardon me, guys. That was an emergency. Okay. So, like I was saying, basically now we now have our button style, and then we are already conditionally changing our text within our component. So you can see that this is also a very effective method of styling, right? Now, some organizations might not want you to style your components like this. So always pay attention to what kind of styling is required for a particular scenario. Okay. So I believe we all understand what we've done so far with regards to inline styling. Are we clear so far? All right, cool. So let's look at models, CSS models, right? So basically for models, for CSS models, they help you avoid class name conflicts, right? Because now, let's assume that you are writing like the way you're writing this external CSS now, right? You can have different issues with class name conflicts, even probably with global styling too, right? So maybe you have you fall into the scenario where you don't know how to name like you're out of ideas for class names and all that, right? Or the code base is so large, you can't remember what you named a particular style somewhere, and then you decide to name another component with that same style. Are we following? Now, in those kind of scenarios, we advise that you use that is CSS models. Okay. Yeah, okay. So Udo, you said no. All right. So where are you lost, please?
So please,
So I'm not really getting you because your audio is breaking.
styling again, I
Hello,
beg. I
Udo.
don't understand it.
Hello, Udo. Okay, so just write in the text box if you can hear me.
Network is really bad. But could you just go through the inline
Okay, I hear you. I hear you. I'm on it. Okay. Yes, you can mute yourself now. Yes, so Udo, I heard you. You can mute yourself. I hope you can actually hear me because with that network, I don't know if you are following us, right? So inline styling basically is, so to write inline styling in React, use the style attribute, right? Now for this style attribute, you see that what we are doing is that we are defining, this is like writing styles inside JavaScript, right? So we are defining our style over here. And then we're passing this style variable now. We're now passing it to our style. This will do the same thing that class name. Hold on. This will do the same thing that class name input wrapper will do, right? The difference now is that you are not defining your style inside your CSS file. You are defining your style inside your component. Okay, you are defining your style inside your component. So if you come over here now, so what we've done here is define that style. So I have put all my styles here and I want to use this for my input field, okay? Now for this one, it is my button style that I have defined here. So just the way you would have defined your style inside your CSS file, we are now using JavaScript to define that style inside our JSX. Okay. Now for this, what we have done, we have added the style. You can see that it's not really that complicated. You are just putting in your, I put the padding, the background color, and the color and the border, right? So as soon as I pass this to this style property, right? It implements the style that class name would have implemented. Do you understand? Good. So this is the same thing. When we started this class, I defined all these styles inside here, right? So I defined them here where I added padding, right? So let's just use string blocks. And then some other styles that I added here, right? So what we've done here is practically the same with what I'm doing here. But this is cleaner. Okay, because now we have removed all the styles. Imagine that we have so many styles that we want to add to this particular input field, okay? And then you are writing it inside here. You can imagine how tacky this will look, right? But because we have defined our style and all we have done is add the style here and it implements the styles that you've defined. Is that clear? Now, for this conditional style, conditional background that we did, we're only utilizing a state. We have a state here. You understand how to declare a state? We have declared a state, and this is active. We have set it to a default state of true. So because it is at the default state of true, it will always pick this color, right? So we are saying if this is active, is true, we want to utilize this color. But if it's active, it's false. We want this color to be the background color of the button. Now we are just deciding which color we want to add to this button based on the state of this is active. Now, at the point where this is active is false, if we check our code, the color of the background color of our button will be red, which is what we've defined here. The conditional statement that we've defined here. So if this is active, it's false. We want the button to be red. Now, if I change this to true, and we go back and check our button components, the color changes to green. Because now it is truthy, and the idea behind our statement here is that when it is truthy, we want to display this particular color as the background color. Rahim, are you clear now? All right. So back to CSS model. So for this particular forming form.css, let's just convert it to a model, right? So if we add, so if we rename this and then we add model, sorry guys, we'll add dots model dot CSS, okay? Are we good, guys? Now, if I go to our component, I can import this style sheet now as a model, okay? So let's go to our component and import. So instead of importing it like this now, we can import it like this. Import style from this, okay? Where its value is not red. Okay. So now what we can do with this, so let's remove this from here for now. Okay. And then let's return this to class name. Okay. To avoid errors, let's just do that across board. So let's take this button style to our CSS file. Excuse me, guys. Okay, so background. I think there's an issue here. Hold on, guys. All right, then. Yeah. Forgive me. Okay. All right, so button style is done. Okay, so let's go ahead and utilize this style inside our component, okay? So if we come into our component, all we need to do now is pick this style and then access the particular class that we want to utilize inside the class name. So if we come here and we do this, so this was input wrapper, right? So let's say style dot input wrapper. All right. So if we do this now, we should be able to fail to resolve Okay, yes, so we have an issue with our file because we haven't modified the name. Okay. Okay, so basically, I think I know where our issue is. So we have input wrapper, and input wrapper does not exist at the moment. So let's just add this across board. And remember that for every other style that we have, right? For form field will not also display the correct style because of how we are accessing it here, okay? So button. Okay, so we have our style function in here. So basically what's happening is that you see that the form does not look like it was before we did this. That's because we are not accessing the form field, wrapper, and other styles correctly at the moment based on the fact that we've converted it to a model, right? So if we do this and attach it here, right? And convert this to a model, add this here, we should be able to replicate this across board. Okay. Should be able to replicate this and have our code run perfectly. All right, so we have that class name. Where else do we have form wrapper? Okay. Okay, so now we've added all the styles, right? Using the model method, okay? Now if we go here, we can see that our form is back to shape because everything is now back in place. Are we good? Do we understand? Are we clear with this? All right, so it's you are still picking the same thing, but this time what you are doing is you are accessing it directly from this model. So even if you have another model that has the same, all these styles within it, there will be no conflict because you will be accessing the model first before accessing the style. Do you get my point? Are we together? Yeah, so Excel, I don't know if you were with us all along because I think I explained the difference just now. So basically what happened, what the difference between this now is that you are picking it as a model. So now because you are picking it as a model, there's no conflict. You can actually use the same class name to style another form somewhere, right? And then create a CSS model for that form. Okay. Now, the fact that I've created a CSS model platform, that's because you can have maybe 3 different forms in your application, right? And you want to like be consistent with the naming of that application. So you want to continue with form wrapper, form field wrapper, and all that. But you don't want to have any conflicts, any confusion. Like you don't want your application to be confused about the class names, right? Or at the same time, you also want somebody coming in to get all modeled up, right? Now, picking it as a model, what happens is you are now accessing the model first. So you can actually import this as import forming style, right? And add it here. So now the model you are picking is forming style model. So you must always pick forming style model before you assess the actual class styling that you want to utilize. So I'm changing this so that you don't think this style is like a compulsory thing. So do you understand that? Do you understand now? Okay, all right, cool. All right. So with this, we've covered external styling, we've also covered inline styling, and we've just covered CSS in JavaScript. Okay, I think this is model. We just covered model. So let's go ahead and see other methods of using just one more method since we are pretty much gone on time. So let's look at style components. So for style components, let's utilize another component to handle style components, okay? So let's use, let's see what the overview screen looks like. Okay. So let's see what the overview. So dashboard, let's see overview, okay? So let's have a simple H1 tag that we want to utilize as our title, tag. Let's just have these 3 tags, okay? All right. So now we need to install style components, okay? So I'm going to drop the command for installing style component in the text box. You can go ahead and install it. so that we can code along. All right. So now that we have style components installed, we can go ahead and utilize the contents of style components. Okay. Now, first thing we'll do is import style from style component. Okay. So now that we've imported style from style component, now this is another method of writing JavaScript, writing style in JavaScript, okay, as JavaScript. Now, if we come here, we want to remember the name of this particular library. It's called style components. Now, it's called style components for a reason, because we are not just styling a component, we are creating a component. Or let's say we are extending a component or recreating a component to look a particular kind of way. Okay. Now, so if I say const title, right? Let's okay. So if I say const title, and then for this title, I want to style my h1 tag. So I want to style my h1 tag. Okay. So let me explain this before we all get lost. So basically, what this style is supposed to do now is supposed to convert this h1 to a style component. So presently, this h1 now, this title component, this is now a h1 component or a h1 tag, okay, which has been modified, a modified h1 tag, that is a h1 tag that has been modified using the styled, okay, to modify this particular h1. So if I pick this h1 now, I can use it as a component here. Are we following? Now, all I need to do inside this particular declaration now is write my style. So if I want to say for this particular h1, I want the font size to be 2 rems, and then I want the color to be, say, sea green. Okay. Then I want to align the text to center. All right. So now I have defined the style for this very component. So I have modified this h1 tag using this style. So now this particular new component that has been created will utilize all the styles that I have defined here. So if we come here, we should be able to see our h1 tag with that style. So now that we are no more using a h1 tag, we now have a component called title. We can do the same for the p tag, right? So let's assume that we want to have a details component. And then for that details component, we want our text to be a lot smaller, right? And we definitely don't want to use the same color. So let's say this. Okay. We also want to align it to the center. Okay. So if we pick these details, we can come here and remove the p tag, replace it with the details component. And when we go here, we can see that our new component has its custom style. Are we good? So yes, basically you can actually export this particular, you can export this style. So no, you can't export it. Forgive me. You can't export it. So it's component based, basically. Yeah, so you know what a syntax is, right? So this you use backticks when creating a style component. That is the syntax for creating style components. All right, thank you. All right, so basically, I think this is pretty clear. So you can actually create as many components as you want. So you can actually have like custom components across your whole application. But basically, what you'll be doing is write your style within your JavaScript, right? So depends on the needs that you have. So if this is the best approach for you for the styling needs that you have, you can go ahead and utilize this method. Okay. Or you can go ahead and use style components. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, you can try that. You can try that, Josh, and tell us the outcome. Okay, so let's just go ahead and check out something else. Okay. All right, so let's look at a little bit, let's add a button. Let's look at a button component so that we can look at something something with that. Okay. So let's say we want to create a button component, right? And we want to pass props to that very button component. So that is a styled button component. Okay. Now let's create the component first. So if we create this component and call it button, okay. So as you know, definitely we want to style the button. So you want to look for the button, right? Good. So for this now, let's give it padding. Let's just remove this. Let's give it a padding of 1020, okay. I will do the background color last. I will say color of text, white. And then let's say border none. Okay. So now I want us to look at what we did earlier. Remember that we did something like a conditional rendering of our color, right, for the background. So if I say background color here, so I want us to have a prop, right? So if we define this prop now, look at what we've done here. What we've done here is we are checking the props, right? And we are checking that we are trying to access the primary, right? Props primary, okay? And we are saying if this primary exists inside the props of our button, we want to utilize the blue color. If it doesn't exist, that if it's not true, you want to utilize the gray, right? Let's now add this component. So let's say button, the primary in secondary. Okay. So if I save this now, right, you can see that I've added the primary as a prop, right? And it is true to here, right? If I save this and check, you see that for primary button, it is blue. And for secondary button, it is gray. That is the button that does not have any prop is gray. The one that has the primary prop is blue. Is that clear? So basically, so just utilize it for input field, like for input tags, okay? You can do it for your div, right? You can do it for your list. You can do it for, yeah, basically all the input tags, right? So I believe we understand what we've done here. Nobody's confused about this. This is like conditional rendering. Are we good? All right, okay, cool. So let's go ahead, let's move forward, all right? Let's look at emotion. So emotion is also another method of CSS ingest styling, right? So it's also a library. I'm going to drop the installation command for everybody in the text box. So let me also go ahead and install emotion. Okay, so let's go ahead and see what this particular library can also do, okay? So basically, emotion also works some way like style components, okay? So first thing we'll do is let's import the tools that we'll use to utilize. So import structure CSS. Okay, good. So now we've imported CSS, right, from emotion React. So what we'll use this CSS to do is create our, define our style, okay? So for this same type, let's say for this title tag, we will convert this title tag back to H1. H1, then we will apply our style to it, okay? So now, if we come here, I'll just call this, let's convert this to style. And then for here, let's add CSS here. Okay. All right. So basically what I've done now is I've created a new style called style. Okay. So all I need to do is bring this style to my H1 tag, right? And CSS. And then I can add my style there. Okay. Are you following? Are we together, guys? So you see that I utilize this CSS, that this CSS is a part of Emotion React. It's provided by Emotion React, right? And utilizing this CSS here, it immediately defines this style to this particular style variable. Now, once I apply this style variable to my component or my tag, using the CSS attribute or CSS property, you would see that the style will be implemented. Okay, so we had CSS2, then we have color green, text align center. So I think our color is not visible. So let's fix that. So let's be sure that this particular style is working before, so it doesn't seem to work. Why is that? Hold on, guys. We still have an H1 style. Okay, I think this, no, this is H1. Detail is not supposed to be H1. Okay. Versus. Oh, hold on, guys. I'll be right back. I'll be with you. So let's try to put this here. Okay, so apparently this style is not supposed to work. So just hold on, guys. So we're applying this style using the CSS prop. Oh, CSS prop. And this still doesn't work. Okay. So in order to save time, let's go ahead and look at, we'll get back to this. We'll start with this before we end our class, okay? Before we start our class tomorrow. No, no, no. No, it's not like emojis. So let's go ahead and work with the other method of using emotion, okay? So let's import styles from emotion start. So if you look at the link I sent, the command I sent, right? You notice that you installed two different emotions, right? Emotion React and emotion style. So let's utilize emotion style. Then we'll get back to what we have or what we did with the CSS method. We'll do that in our next class to save time, okay? So styled dots. So let's use div. Okay. Let's call this a card. And then I'll update this design. So I want to put background color. Background should be white. Then we should have some padding. And let's have some box shadow. No, 0.1, yeah. Okay, so let's work with this. So for this card component now, let's just remove this. Let's utilize the card component as our div, okay? So as you can see, all these will also affect all this style will also work for the other components that were created, right? Because even though we are using a different library now, right? Since it's the same method for this particular pattern of utilizing emotion, right? So now what happens is when we save this, we should be able to see the card display good. So now we have our card displayed. That color, that background color is too white. So let's change it to something a little darker to help us visualize our content. Okay, so let's see what this looks like. Good. So you see, we have our card component now designed, okay? We can give the card component a width so that it's not too big. So we can say a width of definitely not 100%. So also 50%. Good. So then let's have margin auto. All right. So are we good? Do we understand what I've done with emotion? Yes, exactly. Creating the component and styling it. So you create the component using the library. Then that library gives you the opportunity to style that component however you want it to be, right? Then you now utilize the product of the combination of your style, the div, and the provision from the style components, and then you can easily use that to style your components and move on. Yeah. Any questions, anyone so far? Are we good, guys? Please, let's respond. I don't like when the responses are so slow. Can we move? Are we good? Okay, so you have a question, Udo. Go ahead. Ask your question. Unmute yourself. If you know your network is not so sound, just
Can you hear me now, please?
you're still breaking anyways. But you can write.
Can I be heard now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Go on.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so Udo, I think your network is really bad. Just write your question. Hello, Udo. Please.
Just,
Okay, so Udo is really having a bad time with network today. That's bad. So please, Udo, if you can hear me, just mute yourself and ask your question in the text box. So Udo's question is, can these components, I can't even mute her. Can someone help me tell Udo to mute herself, please? So Udo's question is, can these components be imported and exported to be used elsewhere? And I already answered that you cannot import and export them. So these are like component based. You are going to write them within here. But if you write this component outside, if you write them outside here, you will be able to export them. Do you understand? So if you write it outside here, you should be able to export these components. And you can still use them inside your components, right? So even if I shut this down, you can see that this is still in use. Okay. So now in this case, now you have made this component like a model now. So I can pick this component and import it inside my formic forms and use it as my div here. All right. Then I can import it. There we go. As you can see, I've imported that card. So if I go to the About Us page where we have our form, you can see that that card is wrapping the first name. Does that answer your question, Udo? So basically, initially we're writing those, we're creating these components inside the overview JSX. And with that, you cannot export from here because its component is like block scoped. We put it inside our components, so we cannot export it from here, all right? But when you write it outside, definitely you can export it. I know Josh was also having that issue. I think, Josh, this was what you were talking about, right? When I said you can try it and tell your colleagues, correct? Yes, okay, good. So basically you can do this, all right? Are we good? Rahim, go ahead, please. We are pretty much past our time, so go ahead.
Good evening.
Yeah, good evening.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Okay. Thanks for the lecture. Concerning the styling in the React, I came across Tailwind CSS
Yes,
method
so
of styling where you have to install the
yes, so yeah, you don't need to go too
Tailwind
far. Don't worry.
CSS, then configure.
Hello, it's
Yeah,
fine. I
I'm with
understand.
you.
I get where you're going.
Okay.
We just started
Okay.
treating stars, so don't be in a hurry. We have
Okay,
2
we've
hours.
not gotten.
We'll
Okay,
get there.
okay. No problem.
So,
Okay, no
all
problem.
right. Okay, so in summary, we know the differences between all these methods that we've looked at. So you can decide on what you want to use based off your needs, right? So if you think using style components would benefit your project better, of course, you can go right ahead and utilize style components. A lot of people actually use style components. Like your colleague just said, there's Tailwind, there's Bootstrap, there's a lot, right? Even with Tailwind, they have predefined components that you can just pick and use, maybe customize a little, right? So yes, there are a lot of limitless possibilities with regards to styling and a lot of tools to utilize when trying to style. Okay, so we will end our class here today because we have gone way past the allocated time. Thank you all for joining today's class. We had pretty much some difficulties today. That will teach you that in programming, don't give up. That's all I can say. Don't give up. If you have an issue and you give up, then you are done. But if you have an issue and you put your head into it and you look at it deeply, pay more attention, you will definitely see the solution. So thank you, everyone, and bye-bye.